Alrighty, what is good? I hope everybody is doing well. This is going to be the market review for today, Thursday, January 30th. It was a pretty good day. I ended up trading AM and PM, and I got a good trade in AM, kind of fumbled the bag on the second trade in AM, took a nice little break, and then got a nice little short in PM. And I want to talk about the trades in AM, kind of what I did wrong down with the one I fumbled, and talk about the PM one as well. So first things first for today, my first trade. I was monitoring this. If we go up to the 4 hour, actually really quick, there was this 4 hour fractal that I was looking at. It jumped out to me. It was a pretty obvious point. It lined up beautifully with low time frame structure, and I'll show you here in a second. But importantly, I believe ES had already mitigated this fractal right here. So that was kind of something to note. And in the instance, we kind of refer back to it and likely kind of what we could possibly expect to happen. Okay. So if we go down to the 1 minute chart from there specifically and drag this back over, there's kind of a couple things that happen. So obviously you can see we get close to this low, right? Or this midpoint of that fractal. And if we go over here, you can see the structure on the lower time frame. If you look at this, it's pretty nice. Okay. So first things first, what do we see right here, right? So obviously we're ranging right here. This has been a common theme all week, essentially, is we'll get these sharp moves and then we'll just start to consolidate for a little bit. And either we will form some type of low and then pivot from there, or just get a continuation back down, right? So I had taken a buy limit. So if we go up to the 15-minute chart, I want to talk about the confluences that I use with this specifically. So first off, there was a 4 hour fractal, right? We have a 4 hour fractal. We have this liquidity point resting right here. We could deem that low. Now on top of this, on the 15-minute chart, I don't know why it's not showing. Maybe it's on the hourly. Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing now. But there was a wick that I had taken. Oh, I take that back. That's for the second trade. That's for the second trade. Apologies on that. So for confluence wise, we had that 4 hour fractal, right? We started to consolidate. We had this low to sweep. This kind of looked like a micro AMD to me. Essentially, what my plan and objective here was to play the retrace back into this area, right? I wanted to see price, kind of my ultimate point that I wanted to see price reach to was this unmitigated candle right here. However, like I said, with the accounts I'm trading specifically for this setup that I had this morning, I'm pushing size. I'm able to catch, I mean, that's a $900 trade per account. And how much volatility was this? That was still a 52-point move, even though it looks pretty small. It adds up quick, right? But I had got in. I don't remember where my entry was. I believe it was right below this low. I'm gonna go look over here because there was something that I know I had anchored off because it was right below the 50% of this. I swear it was a wick, but I don't know why it's not showing on this chart anymore. But like I said, right, what are we expecting, right? We have a micro accumulation. We get that deviation from the range. Let's highlight this really quick. Micro accumulation. What do we have down here? Deviation from the range. I place myself within this wick. I believe my entry was right below this 921 candle. I want to say it was about right here, and it gave an instant refinement right up there. So a tiny little baby stop. And my first TP, or actually I think my final TP, was right at this internal high right before these two wicks right here, just because I was playing a quick little scalp, right? Obviously we were displacing down, not really wanting to try and pick a bottom here because it wasn't in a super logical area. And I kind of understood the conditions that we were in, right? We weren't in super quality conditions, and I was just using my expectations and what price is telling me now to gauge how I should manage this trade. And how I should manage this trade was that I should be quick with it and not expect too much from it. It's a very, very important thing to be able to adapt to based on whatever the market's showing you and kind of tipping its hand at that current moment, right? So this one, I would say probably one of my best managed trades for sure. Beautiful entry right down in this 1 minute wick right down here. Like I said, I believe it was about 55525. I think that was my entry. I'd have to double check and see what it is on the screenshot I posted on Twitter. But this one up here, once we got this strong expansion and we got close to this high, I immediately pulled my stop up to, I believe it was 598, I want to say, is where I got trailed out. And you can see, picture perfect. Got that quick move up to come rebalance this area. Kind of a failed AMD, I would say, expecting it to come at least tap into this 644 level right up here. But then again, you don't have to predict the whole move to make money, right? You just need to be able to catch a little piece of that. Now, zooming out, I want to talk about this really quick. This was one of my worst fumbles I've ever had in my life, to be quite honest, right? So if we come over here, delete all this stuff, right? And we get this low over here and measure that to that high and get this right here. So this is what I was referring to this wick. So if we look over at this 15-minute wick right over here, you can see how beautifully aligned this is with this GB model entry right over here, right? We measure that whole leg. We get our area of interest, right? We have a POI resting there. We have that big 15-minute wick that is left unmitigated. So it could likely be a pivot point in price and kind of what we're expecting. Okay. So now if we go back down to a lower time frame, I actually took my entry, I believe it was right below the 7475 midpoint of GB. And I believe I took it at that wick at 44775. Now, my problem here was, first, I miscalculated my risk. I was on my top step accounts, and I don't not remember the last time I've done this. I miscalculated my risk, and I wouldn't say way over risk, but kind of over my risk tolerance because I am copy trading 5 of them. I was like, okay, this is kind of just a mishap on my part, complete accident. And I'm just going to be a little bit aggressive with my management. And that was the first thing I did wrong, because if we look at this from this perspective, if we go over here, there's 2 things. And this didn't click in my head because I was just kind of too flustered with that moment, that little mental error that I made. If we look at this area right over here, we really don't have anything to sweep. What can we expect to form, right? A lot of times what will form is when we don't have a prominent low to sweep is you'll see an inducement and then we get that flip and then continuation, right? That's exactly what happens here. And I failed to recognize that at that current moment, thinking that we were going to pivot and get a V shape back up into here, which sometimes does happen. More times than not, my entries on how I get in with the level of precision are going to be some sort of bottom in a V-shaped recovery or a significant move down. Okay, that's part of it, right? But then again, I failed to recognize what had happened at this current moment, got way too aggressive with it, and ended up getting stopped out right here at 43375 for, I believe it was about $160 per account loser, which is small, right? It was small. I initially had a little wider risk. Given the entry I was taking, it was kind of a blind limit, and I just did not let the trade breathe. And you can see how beautiful this move is. My TP was actually this internal high right up here at 58475, and you can see the market trades up to it beautifully. These GB levels, you can see how accurate these are. We come up, wick that, retrace off, come up, tap that top one, and completely pivot off it from there. Can't deny the level of precision with that, right? So that was, like I said, one of my biggest fumbles in quite some time. I would have had a rather large day, significantly bigger than what I ended up capturing today, which I'm not saying is wrong, right? I'm so grateful for the money that was made today, but kind of just those little things to note specifically. Okay. So now, getting into PM, this is pretty beautiful, and it's kind of ironic how the Trump news lined up with it when he dropped. He was dropping 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, I believe. But this one, beautiful. There was so much stuff lined up with this. I'm actually kind of shocked it got a deeper mitigation. So if we zoom out a little bit and look at this entire leg, we have an hourly CSS up there. We'll go ahead and go up to the hourly. Why not? We'll go up to the hourly, right? We have an hourly CSS. Valid high. Let me go back and not move that. You can see we have hourly CSS close above, close below, valid high. We have a 1 hour close below this low. So it's going to be something I want to anchor off of specifically. Now, if we go over here, let's go ahead and measure this and get, let me delete this really quick too. We'll go ahead and get that high down to this low right over here. So when I saw this forming, here was my anticipation. Right, I believe it was right about here is when I got on for PM, right about 1 o'clock CST. When I saw this high over here, I was like, okay, more than likely, what's going to form here, right? We have this swing forming. This one down here was already mitigated, I believe. Let's go ahead and measure this. Yeah, this is already mitigated. So when we close up above this high, I was wanting one thing to happen, this to be left open. I didn't want to see price trade up into this high, come back and mitigate this before giving me an entry to go short for one reason. Right? Price has something to gravitate back to after tagging me in the trade, okay? So With that there, that's something lined up. You always need to have something for price to come back and mitigate, right? In the instance you get an entry, you want that kind of magnetic pull back to that area, right? You should be looking for logical exits in that specific area. You have your TP before you even have your trade. You can have that predetermined. That's a huge, huge factor, knowing exactly where you're going to get out before you're even in the trade, right? It just allows a kind of a peace of mind with the trade. So on top of that, if we get this low over here and we measure this, you can see this 50% of this lines up beautifully. What do we also have at this 50% right over here? Unmitigated candle. We drag this over. If I can highlight it, we drag this over. What is that perfectly aligned with? UGB, that midpoint, 7475. Okay, so we have that lined up now. What do we have up here? Unmitigated structure. If we get some CSS projections, I believe it was off of the, I don't remember. It was not the hourly, it was a 15-minute. Let's go ahead and do this really quick. Yeah, it was a 15-minute right down here. We can get some CSS projections off of this, right? That low down here, boom, fib projection. Look at this, negative 2.5. Where does that line up? Right at that UGB, 7475. So much stuff lined up here. We even had, I believe, midnight open, resting right at that, like to the tick. So there was a bunch of stuff lined up there, obviously. And at that current moment, I was monitoring ES, and I do want to go over to ES really quick and show you what I was looking at. So the reason I wanted to get short on NQ and not ES was if we look at this right here. Let me go up to a 15-minute chart right up here. So at that current moment, let's delete this, delete this. You can see right about here was when NQ was basing sideways prior to closing up above that zone. When I saw this, I was like, okay, what's ES going to do? ES is going to go run this high. We're going to get some form of discorrelation, and that's going to help send NQ and ES back into the range to come mitigate those areas before we continue higher. Now, at that same exact time, if we go up to the hourly chart, what do we have resting right here above this high? This gap. We come up, we tap to 50% of that gap, sweep that high, return back into the range. A lot of stuff moving, a lot of moving parts with this, right? So now, if we go back down here, what do we see happen? Price taps that 50% of that gap, and what do? Absolutely nuke, right? If we go back over to, I think I was on MNQE. We'll see. No, I was not. It was NQH. There we go. Yeah. What was I on? Why is it not showing now? No, MNQH. There are my drawings, right? So what do we see? At that same moment, what does price do? We just so happen to get Trump news. Kind of ironic, right? Kind of ironic. What do? We melt. All TPs smashed. What do we come back and do? Mitigate this area. What do we tap? Boom. 0.41. Almost tap 0.295. It's precise. I don't know what else to tell you. It's magic. It's magic. But those were all the trades today. I'm over this one down here. That one kind of got to me a little bit because I knew what I expected to happen down there and what kind of move I expected, and I still kind of goofed it up a little bit. But hey, you're human. You're going to make mistakes. It's part of the game. You just can't let those get in your head too long and affect your decision making. You need to maybe think about it for 15 minutes and move on. It's part of it. There's always going to be opportunities every day. So that, I believe, is going to be the review for today. Nothing too crazy, not a super long recording, but I wanted to kind of explain in detail of what I was seeing with each setup that I wanted to engage in and kind of go from there, right? And I do really hope that this helps and these kind of reviews help you. I think, in my opinion, they probably do because you're allowed to see kind of my understanding behind each and every single setup I take. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here, get this out as soon as possible, and I appreciate the support, really. It means a lot. It means a lot. It gives me a solid sense of fulfillment being able to make these videos and aid in people kind of furthering their trading knowledge and trading success and just allowing them to grow more, right? So I will catch y'all tomorrow. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if I'm going to be doing a market review tomorrow. But I will catch y'all in the next video. Y'all have a blessed evening, and I will talk to y'all then. Peace.